Is there a danger that by including people who don't have the basis of cooperativism and the tradition, that I presume they're members so they can vote, that they're going to undermine
There's a risk. You're diluting ownership, so the people who've had very good asset value will have less because it's shared amongst a larger group of people. Less of a risk in Oroski because they were doing a profit sharing that was analogous to ownership with the workers in the other stores. But of course there's a risk because you could have a group of workers organize and potentially demutualize, or if there are differentials in the legal structure in another part of the world, it might be harder for the Mondragon folks to hold on to the cooperative.
So far nothing has happened as far as you know?
As far as I know, nothing. So far, so good.
And what about the relationship with the unions generally in Mondragon?
Well, in the early 80s, a lot of workers would become members as a symbolic way of expressing their solidarity with labor. But I've had rank and file workers say to me that there really isn't a case to be made for being a trade union member if you're a cooperative member, because it's your own company. And so when I interviewed a rank and file worker in 1998 who for 30 years has worked in the co-ops, I asked him what it meant, and he said, if I had worked outside the cooperatives, every company that was in this valley previously is gone. And so I could have taken my membership fee, put it in a bank, and it would have earned more interest than I've accumulated on that membership share as a co-op member. But it was the best investment of money because it meant that I've had a job my whole life and my family didn't have to leave this valley.
What about pensions? Have you looked at the pension scheme?
Well, they have a pension scheme through Lagunaro, and then they also have whatever they've accumulated in their internal capital accounts. So for this particular gentleman, he was, it's been a while, I'm not sure if I remember the numbers correctly, but I think he said that he was going to carry out, in terms of an asset stake, $30,000 in addition to his pension benefits that he would get through Lagunaro. And so he felt that he would be in good shape.
And what do you feel is the next stage in your research? What are you planning? I gather you're going to be going back there. What do you feel still needs to be done in your research area? Or what you'd still like to do?
Well, if I had time, I would probably love to go back and see how the extension of membership to non-Basques will change who they are, because I think it would be a fascinating opportunity to see whether you can take a group that really grew out of the Basque nationalist movement and to move it from being clearly focused on nationalism to one that's about extending ownership and membership in a cooperative business to people.
And really being an instrument in spreading cooperativism around the
Yeah,
world.
there's lots of examples of cooperatives that fail after a generation. So if they successfully do this, they will be an important beacon for cooperators worldwide with what they're doing.
One last question, because you probably got some questions too. I can't remember the name of the woman, but she wrote something that is up on Google. You Google Mondragon and there it is, Myth of Mondragon. What was your opinion of
well, as I think I answered this earlier, but she...
Oh, without saying that it was the myth of Mondragon. Okay.
Right. Well, the myth of Mondragon really starts out right from its introduction to say that the managers of the cooperatives are not truly cooperative, that she's highly critical of the managers. And so as I said earlier, I think that it expresses a rigid ideological naivete about what it takes to successfully run a cooperative business. And when I've gone and I've talked with, as I have both in 1982 and 1998, with cooperative managers, they work long hours. In 1998, a plant manager was making about $60,000, which is not much more than a school teacher makes in the United States. And so I think it takes an extremely committed, special group of individuals who are willing to work and take on the responsibilities and the risks of making decisions, hopefully, that are the right decisions with the assets of a group of workers.
And how has this experience changed your life in perspectives and
Well, I started looking at worker cooperatives back in the 1970s. We had lost, with the plant closings of the deindustrialization in the United States, over 30,000 jobs, particularly in machine tools in the Northeast, in my state in particular, Massachusetts. And there was a group of us. Unfortunately, at that time, we were mostly academics and rather theoretical and spent a lot of time talking and not a lot of time out in the communities because we really weren't sure what to do or how to do it. So what it changed for me was it gave me a vision of the possibilities and really instilled in me a commitment to work for practical solutions rather than to dwell on writing the most definitive work on the subject or the next best theoretical text on ownership.
the best American novel? So
Yeah.
it was sort of praxis, linking.
Yes, praxis is the key. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
You're
Do
welcome.
we have permission to
Actually, I
use
just
it?
have
Oh,
a
you
couple
want?
questions.
Yes.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Just, why do you think it was the Basque region that was fertile ground
Um,
for the co-op?
the Basque region was subjected to very harsh retribution from the Franco government after the Civil War. Iñaki Aguirre, who was the first Lehendakari of the Basque people, had decided to flee after having opposed the Franquistas. And Franco was very angry at the Basque. Aguirre was a businessman, and he, along with the business community, had opposed Franco. So Franco was highly suspicious of the remaining Basque business community. And so Father Arizmendi Arrieta recognized that as a cooperative, they might have an easier time because it would be church-based rather than coming out of the traditional business community. But Franco worked to really leave the region in disrepair. Roads were in very rough shape. Trains were slow. The tracks weren't maintained well. So he did a lot to make it a very discouraging place for people to do business. When they started the cooperatives, you could have started with the first product they made were propane gas burners. And they actually didn't have to be very good or very effective as a product because there was such scarcity in a post-war economy that they could do anything and there was a market for it. But essentially, I think Jesus Larrañaga, who was one of the founders, captured it well. He said, we were desperate to create opportunity for ourselves. Most of the men were in prison. Most of the young people lacked role models. And we knew that we had to do something for ourselves. And he said what that meant was they worked 6 days a week. They worked long hours. And gradually built up the cooperatives. Father Arizmendi would say, I've been thinking, I think we should develop a bank. And the founders would roll their eyes and they'd say, and how will we do that? We're not bankers. And he'd say, we'll figure it out. And they would. And so when you say why the Basques, I think, if you look at the history of co-op development around the globe, people who are in need will find a way to come together and try to address their needs if they have the ability to trust each other and to work off those relationships to make something happen together. Moses Cody, Father Moses Cody, who started the Antigonish movement in Nova Scotia, said that we have to be masters of our own destiny, because indeed it's only by being masters of our destiny that anything will ever change. And I think that was true for the Basques as well.